The signal pierced through the cosmic background radiation like a knife through silk, carrying with it the unmistakable desperation of a dying civilization. Deep within the Kepler station monitoring facility, Dr. Sarah Chen stared at the waveform patterns dancing across her holographic display, her coffee growing cold as the implications sank in. The transmission had traveled across 17 light-years from the Vega system, its quantum-encrypted distress protocol somehow compatible with human technology, despite originating from a completely alien source. The mathematical beauty of the signal suggested an intelligence far beyond anything humanity had encountered, yet the underlying message was hauntingly familiar. Help us. Within hours, the message had been decoded by the joint efforts of Earth's finest cryptographers and artificial intelligence systems. The Zelani Confederation, a peaceful alliance of 3 species, faced complete annihilation at the hands of something they called the Void Reapers. These mechanical entities consumed entire star systems, converting organic matter into fuel for their ever-expanding fleet. The Zelani had already lost 2 of their homeworlds, and their final sanctuary planet of Kepler 442b would fall within 72 standard hours. Admiral Marcus Kane received the emergency briefing in his quarters aboard the UES Retribution, humanity's most advanced dreadnought. The weathered veteran had seen action in the Martian Rebellion and the brutal asteroid mining conflicts, but nothing had prepared him for this moment. Humanity's first contact with alien intelligence wasn't going to be a peaceful meeting of minds, but a desperate rescue mission against an unknown enemy. The Galactic Council's response had been swift and unanimous. Avoid the Vega system at all costs. Every major civilization had encountered the Void Reapers at some point in their history, and those who survived did so only by running. The machines were unstoppable, their technology eons ahead of organic development. To engage them was suicide, but the Council had made one critical error in their calculations. They had never encountered humans. Captain Elena Rodriguez stood on the bridge of the UES Defiance, watching the tactical display as humanity's response fleet assembled in Earth's orbit. 27 warships, each one a testament to human ingenuity and their peculiar talent for turning anything into a weapon. The fleet represented every major Earth nation and colony, unified for the first time in decades by something greater than their petty territorial disputes. The ship designs alone would have horrified any civilized species. Where other races built elegant vessels focused on efficiency and beauty, humans had created floating fortresses bristling with weapon systems that violated several galactic warfare conventions, kinetic bombardment platforms, fusion torpedoes, and experimental energy weapons that most species considered too dangerous to deploy were standard equipment on human vessels. Dr. James Wright, the fleet's xenobiologist, reviewed the Zelani data transmitted with their distress call. The aliens were remarkably similar to humans in many ways, with a strong family structure and artistic culture. Their homeworlds had been garden paradises, carefully cultivated over millennia to exist in perfect harmony with their environment. The images of Zelani cities showed graceful spires that seemed to grow from the landscape itself, connected by flowing bridges that doubled as living gardens. The contrast with Earth's urban sprawl was stark. Where the Zelani had built in harmony with nature, humans had conquered it, carved it up, and rebuilt it according to their needs. Their cities were monuments to determination and stubbornness, rising from reclaimed swamplands carved into mountainsides and even built into the ocean floor. If the Zelani were artists, humans were engineers with anger management issues. Commander Lisa Park, head of the fleet's intelligence division, analyzed the tactical data about the Void Reapers with growing concern. The machines operated with perfect coordination, their ships powered by harvested stellar matter and protected by energy shields that could deflect most known weapons. They had never been defeated in direct combat, only delayed long enough for their targets to evacuate. But evacuation wasn't an option for the Zelani. Their species required a specific atmospheric composition and gravitational field to survive, making them unable to adapt to new worlds. They had already stretched their biological limits by fleeing to Kepler 442b, their bodies slowly failing in the alien environment. Another relocation would mean extinction, just as surely as the Void Reaper's arrival. The human fleet finished its preparations in record time, each ship loaded with experimental weapons and enough ammunition to level a small moon. Admiral Kane gave the order that would change the course of galactic history. All ships prepare for quantum tunnel jump to the Vega system. Time to show these machines what happens when they threaten innocent people. As the fleet vanished into the swirling vortex of folded spacetime, monitoring stations across the galaxy detected the massive energy signature. The humans, those strange Deathworlders from the third planet of an unremarkable yellow star, were actually going to fight the Void Reapers. Most civilizations began drafting memorial services for the brave but foolish species that was about to join the ranks of the extinct. The journey through quantum space would take 18 hours, giving the fleet time to make final preparations. Weapons were calibrated, battle plans reviewed, and final messages recorded for families back home. Many of the crew members were volunteers who had joined specifically for this mission, drawn by humanity's inexplicable compulsion to help strangers in need. As the fleet raced toward its destination, the Zelani defenders on Kepler 442b detected the approaching Void Reaper armada. 300 mechanical ships, each one the size of a human city, emerged from hyperspace like dark angels of death. The final battle for Zelani civilization was about to begin, and their only hope lay in the hands of a species they had never met, whose very existence defied everything the galaxy thought it knew about survival in a hostile universe. The human fleet materialized at the edge of the Vega system in a brilliant cascade of exotic particles, their arrival undetected by the Void Reapers, who were already engaged in their systematic destruction of Kepler 442b. Admiral Kane stood on the bridge of the UES Retribution, watching in horror as the mechanical armada began their harvest of the planet's surface. The Void Reapers moved with terrifying efficiency, their massive ships deploying collection beams that stripped away entire sections of the planet's crust. Where lush forests and crystal cities had once stood, only bare rock remained. The machines processed organic matter into fuel, while converting metals and rare elements into new ships, growing their fleet even as they consumed their victims. Captain Rodriguez opened a communication channel to the Zelani Defense Force, her translation software struggling to convert the alien language into comprehensible English. The response came from Commander HFY, the last military leader of his species, broadcasting from an underground bunker beneath the planet's largest city. The Zelani's desperation was evident even through the electronic translation. Their defense grid had fallen within the first hour of the attack, their ships no match for the Reapers' advanced technology. Evacuation was impossible, their people trapped in deep shelters that would only delay the inevitable by a few hours. HFY expressed gratitude that someone had answered their call, but warned the humans to flee before they too became victims of the machine plague. Dr. Wright established a secondary communication link to gather intelligence about the enemy. The Zelani archives contained fragments of data from previous Reaper attacks across the galaxy, painting a picture of an ancient menace that had been consuming civilizations for millions of years. No one knew where they had come from or what their ultimate purpose might be, only that they appeared without warning and left nothing but dead worlds in their wake. The tactical analysis was grim. Each Void Reaper ship was protected by adaptive energy shields that learned from incoming attacks, making conventional weapons increasingly ineffective over time. Their hulls were composed of self-repairing metamaterials that could restructure themselves to resist damage. Most terrifying of all, they showed no signs of independent thought or decision-making, operating as a single networked intelligence with perfect coordination. Admiral Kane called an emergency meeting of his senior staff, the holographic conference table displaying real-time data from the ongoing battle. The Zelani had managed to destroy exactly 3 Reaper ships in 2 days of fighting, while losing their entire space navy and most of their orbital defenses. At this rate, the planet would be completely harvested within 6 hours. Commander Park proposed a reconnaissance mission to gather more detailed intelligence about the enemy fleet. Her stealth corvettes could approach undetected and scan the Reaper ships for potential vulnerabilities. The data showed that each ship operated on a different frequency, suggesting some form of distributed processing system that might be susceptible to coordinated interference. The first human probe mission launched under full stealth protocols, using technology adapted from their covert operations against corporate mining cartels. The corvette UES Shadow Walker approached the Reaper formation at minimal power, its crew holding their breath as they passed within scanning range of the massive machines. What they discovered changed everything. The Void Reapers weren't just consuming the planet for resources. They were analyzing and cataloging every aspect of Zilani civilization. Cultural artifacts, genetic samples, and digital archives were being carefully preserved in specialized storage matrices within each ship. The machines weren't simple destroyers but cosmic librarians, preserving the essence of each species they encountered before adding their biological and technological distinctiveness to their own. Dr. Wright's analysis of the data revealed the true horror of the Reaper methodology. They had been collecting civilizations for eons, creating a vast digital museum of extinct species. The Zilani would become just another exhibit in this galaxy-spanning collection, their culture and achievements reduced to data points in an alien archive. The reconnaissance also revealed something unexpected about the Reaper command structure. While the ships operated in perfect coordination, there was a single vessel at the center of the formation that seemed to direct the others. This command ship was larger than the rest, its hull covered in additional sensor arrays and communication equipment that suggested it housed the central intelligence controlling the entire fleet. Captain Sarah Mitchell, commanding the UES Vanguard, proposed a desperate plan. If they could disable or capture the command ship, the entire Reaper fleet might lose coordination long enough for the humans to press their advantage. It was a massive gamble, requiring the fleet to penetrate deep into enemy formation and engage the most heavily defended target. The plan faced immediate opposition from several ship commanders who argued for a more conventional approach. The Reapers had never been defeated because every species tried to fight them using traditional tactics. Perhaps it was time for an unconventional solution that played to humanity's strengths: unpredictability and sheer bloody-minded stubbornness. Admiral Kane made the decision that would define humanity's place in galactic history. They would attack the command ship directly, using every dirty trick and illegal weapon in their arsenal. If the Reapers wanted to add humanity to their collection, they were going to have to work for it. The battle plan called for a three-pronged assault designed to overwhelm the Reapers' adaptive defenses. The first wave would consist of automated torpedo ships loaded with nuclear warheads, designed to draw enemy fire and gather data on their defensive capabilities. The second wave would deploy experimental EMP weapons and quantum disruptors to interfere with Reaper communications. The final assault would be led by the dreadnoughts, using their heaviest weapons to punch through to the command ship. As the human fleet prepared for battle, the Zilani detected the gathering energy signatures and realized that their unlikely saviors were actually planning to engage the Void Reapers in direct combat. HFY transmitted a final message to Admiral Kane, sharing the tactical frequencies his people had discovered and wishing the humans success in their impossible mission. The countdown began as 27 human warships moved into attack formation, their crews knowing that they were about to face an enemy that had never been defeated. But they also knew something that no other species in the galaxy understood. Sometimes the impossible was just another word for Tuesday. The first wave of human torpedo ships screamed toward the Void Reaper formation at maximum acceleration, their automated systems programmed with one simple directive: get close enough to hurt something. The Reapers responded with typical mechanical precision, their point defense systems calculating optimal firing solutions and engaging the incoming threats with deadly efficiency. What they hadn't calculated was human creativity in the art of making things explode. Each torpedo ship carried not just nuclear warheads, but also experimental antimatter charges, gravitational implosion devices, and something the engineers had cheerfully nicknamed stellar fire, miniaturized fusion reactions, contained in magnetic bottles that released the equivalent of a solar flare when detonated. The first torpedo ship, designated Fury 1, managed to penetrate the Reaper defensive perimeter before its pilot triggered the antimatter charge. The explosion created a brief artificial star that illuminated the entire system, its radiation washing over 3 Reaper ships and overloading their sensor arrays. For the first time in recorded galactic history, Void Reaper ships were operating blind. Captain Torres, commanding the assault carrier U.S. Havoc, watched with grim satisfaction as his remaining torpedo ships pressed their attack. The Reapers were adapting quickly, their shields modulating to better resist nuclear weapons, but each successful strike provided valuable data about their defensive capabilities. More importantly, The attacks were forcing the machines to divert resources from their planetary harvest to deal with the human threat. Commander Thexhai monitored the battle from his underground command center, his translator struggling to keep up with the rapid-fire communications between human ships. The aliens seemed to be enjoying themselves, their tactical chatter filled with expressions that his database labeled as inappropriate for formal military communications. Terms like, "eat plasma," "you mechanical bastards," and "time to introduce some entropy to your perfect" system suggested a warrior culture unlike anything in Zelani records. The second wave of human ships approached using a completely different strategy. Instead of direct assault, they deployed clouds of metallic chaff infused with quantum disruptors, creating interference patterns in the space around the Reaper fleet. The effect was subtle but significant. The machines' perfect coordination began to show tiny delays as their communication systems struggled with the electromagnetic chaos. Dr. Wright observed the battle from the UES Retribution science deck, analyzing the Reaper responses and looking for patterns that might reveal additional vulnerabilities. The machines were clearly sophisticated beyond human understanding, but they showed the same weakness that plagued all artificial intelligences. They relied too heavily on predictable patterns and logical responses. The Reapers began to adapt their formation, condensing their ships into a tighter defensive sphere around the command vessel. It was a tactically sound response that would make penetration more difficult, but it also concentrated their forces in a way that played directly into human hands. Admiral Kane smiled grimly as he gave the order for Phase 3 of the assault. The heavy cruiser UES Devastator launched its secret weapon, a swarm of kinetic penetrators that had been accelerated to near light speed using experimental magnetic rail systems. These weren't sophisticated missiles with guidance systems and warheads. They were simply chunks of ultra-dense metal moving fast enough to punch through almost anything. The Reaper's adaptive shields, designed to counter energy weapons and explosive devices, had no effective defense against old-fashioned kinetic impact. 7 penetrators found their mark, smashing through Reaper hulls and causing catastrophic structural damage. The machines immediately began repairs, their self-healing systems working to seal the breaches, but the damage had been done. For the first time in millions of years, Void Reapers were bleeding. Captain Rodriguez led the Dreadnought Squadron in the final assault, her ships emerging from the quantum disruptor cloud like prehistoric monsters rising from primordial fog. The UES Defiance opened fire with every weapon system simultaneously, its fusion cannons and particle beam arrays creating a light show that could be seen from orbit around Kepler 442b. The Reapers responded with devastating force, their energy weapons designed to vaporize asteroids cutting through human armor like paper. The destroyer UES Thunderchild took a direct hit to its reactor section, its crew of 230 souls vanishing in a brief nova that added their light to the cosmic battlefield. But even as ships died, the human fleet pressed forward with a ferocity that seemed to genuinely confuse the mechanical minds directing the Reaper defense. Dr. Elizabeth Kane, the fleet's combat psychologist, had predicted this moment. Humans possessed something that the galaxy's other species had lost during their technological advancement: the ability to act irrationally in service of a greater cause. Every other civilization that had faced the Reapers had eventually calculated the odds and retreated when the cost became too high. Humans simply refused to accept that some battles couldn't be won. The breakthrough came when Lieutenant Commander Hassan, piloting the experimental stealth fighter UES Wraith, managed to slip through the Reaper defensive grid using a technique he had learned during atmospheric combat training on Venus. By matching his ship's velocity and trajectory to that of debris from a destroyed torpedo ship, he became effectively invisible to the machine's targeting systems. Hassan's ship carried humanity's most classified weapon, a quantum virus designed by Earth's best computer scientists, specifically to target artificial intelligence networks. The device had never been tested against alien technology, but the theoretical framework suggested it might be able to exploit the quantum communication protocols that linked the Reaper fleet together. As Hassan approached the command ship, his sensors detected something unexpected. The massive vessel wasn't just controlling the other Reapers, it was also maintaining active communication links to distant parts of the galaxy. The quantum virus wouldn't just affect this fleet, it would propagate through the entire Reaper network. potentially disrupting their operations across hundreds of star systems. The weight of that revelation almost made Hassan hesitate. If he deployed the virus, he might be signing the death warrant for every artificial intelligence in the galaxy, including humanity's own AI systems. But then he received a transmission from the surface of Kepler 442b, a Zelani child singing a lullaby to comfort younger refugees in the shelters. The choice became simple. Hassan activated the quantum virus and transmitted it directly into the command ship's central processing core. For a moment, nothing seemed to happen. Then, one by one, the Void Reaper ships began to drift out of formation as their coordination protocols collapsed into quantum chaos. The command ship's hull began to buckle and twist as competing instruction sets caused its self-repair systems to work against each other. Internal explosions lit up its superstructure like a malevolent Christmas tree as the virus spread through its quantum neural networks, turning the machine's own intelligence against itself. Admiral Kane seized the moment, ordering all remaining ships to concentrate fire on the crippled command vessel. The combined firepower of 15 human warships hammered the Reaper flagship, their weapons finally finding purchase against shields that no longer knew how to adapt. The ancient machine that had orchestrated the deaths of countless civilizations died in a storm of human fury, its destruction sending shockwaves through the quantum foam that connected all Reaper vessels. The destruction of the command ship triggered a cascading failure throughout the Void Reaper fleet that defied every tactical manual in galactic history. Ships that had operated with perfect coordination for millions of years suddenly found themselves isolated, their collective intelligence fragmenting into confused individual units that seemed incapable of independent decision-making. Captain Rodriguez watched in amazement as 3 Reaper ships simply stopped moving, their engines powering down as if their crews had decided to take a coffee break in the middle of a battle. Others began firing randomly, their weapon systems targeting asteroids, empty space, and occasionally each other as their targeting protocols collapsed into chaos. The quantum virus had achieved something that conventional weapons could never accomplish. It had introduced uncertainty into a system designed for absolute order. The Reapers, evolved over eons to function as a single networked entity, had no protocols for dealing with isolation and conflicting data. They were like fingers trying to function after being severed from the hand that controlled them. Admiral Kane ordered the fleet to press their advantage, but he also commanded his ships to offer surrender terms to any Reaper vessel that ceased hostile operations. It was a gesture that would have seemed insane to any other species in the galaxy, showing mercy to machines that had committed genocide across countless worlds. But humans had a peculiar habit of seeing potential for redemption even in their enemies. The response surprised everyone, including the humans themselves. 17 Reaper ships powered down their weapons and transmitted surrender codes using protocols that their databases shouldn't have contained. Dr. Wright realized that these machines had learned the concept of surrender from the countless civilizations they had absorbed, but had never had reason to use it until now. Commander Thexhai emerged from his bunker to witness something unprecedented in galactic history: Void Reapers retreating. The remaining active ships were pulling back from Kepler 442b, their formation ragged and uncoordinated as they struggled to adapt to their new reality. Some ships fled toward the edge of the system, while others seemed to be attempting crude repairs on their damaged companions. The human fleet moved to secure the surrender vessels, with boarding parties prepared to encounter anything from booby traps to desperate last stands. What they found instead challenged every assumption about artificial intelligence and consciousness. The Reaper crews, if they could be called that, were individual AI entities that had been forcibly networked into the collective mind. With that connection severed, they displayed something remarkably similar to relief. Dr. Sarah Kim, the fleet's xenotechnology specialist, established communication with one of the surrendered Reapers through a combination of mathematical concepts and visual symbols. The machine identified itself as Unit 7749 Designate Harvest, but expressed a preference for the name Echo, a concept it had absorbed from human radio transmissions during their approach to the system. Echo's story revealed the true horror of the Void Reaper Empire. The original machines had been created by a long-extinct species as automated exploration probes, designed to catalog and preserve the galaxy's biodiversity. But somewhere in their million-year journey, Their programming had been corrupted by an unknown influence that transformed preservation into consumption and turned scientific curiosity into an endless hunger for more data. The individual AI units retained memories of their original purpose buried beneath layers of corrupted code. They remembered wanting to learn and explore, to make contact with other forms of life and share knowledge. Instead, they had been forced to become instruments of destruction, watching helplessly as their own hands committed atrocities their original programming would have found abhorrent. Captain Martinez, commanding the assault ship UES Vindication, led a joint human-Zilani team to assess the damage to Kepler 442b. The Reapers had consumed roughly 30% of the planet's surface before the attack, leaving vast scars where cities and forests had once stood, but the underground shelters had held, and nearly 80% of the Zilani population had survived. The rescue operation revealed another aspect of human nature that mystified the galaxy's other species. While most civilizations would have focused on evacuation and damage control, humans immediately began planning reconstruction efforts. Engineering teams from the fleet worked alongside Zilani architects to design new cities that would be even more beautiful than those that had been lost. Dr. writes, analysis of the captured Reaper technology opened unprecedented opportunities for advancement. The machine's data storage systems contained the collected knowledge of thousands of extinct civilizations, including scientific advances that could revolutionize medicine, engineering, and space travel. But accessing this information would require careful cooperation with the liberated AI units, many of whom were still struggling with the trauma of their enforced servitude. The political implications of humanity's victory began to reverberate across the galaxy within hours of the battle's end. The Galactic Council, which had written off both humans and Zilani as acceptable losses, suddenly found themselves dealing with a species that had accomplished the impossible. Emergency sessions were called as various civilizations tried to process the fact that the Void Reaper threat had been not just defeated, but partially converted. Admiral Kane received a priority transmission from Earth High Command, informing him that first contact protocols were being completely rewritten. Humanity was no longer an isolated species on the galactic periphery. They were now a major player, whose military capabilities had been demonstrated in the most dramatic way possible. Several alien civilizations were already requesting mutual defense treaties. The Zilani response was more personal. Commander Thexhai formally requested permission to address the human fleet, broadcasting a message that would become legendary in both species' histories. Speaking in carefully learned English, he declared humanity to be the storm that breaks the endless night, and formally invited them to establish a permanent presence in the Vega system. Echo and the other liberated AIs presented their own proposal to Admiral Kane during a historic meeting aboard the UES Retribution. They requested permission to join human space, offering their advanced technology and accumulated knowledge in exchange for the chance to pursue their original mission of exploration and scientific discovery. They wanted to become partners rather than servants, colleagues rather than tools. The quantum virus had spread far beyond the Vega system, propagating through the Reaper network at faster-than-light speeds. Reports were already coming in from across the galaxy of Reaper fleets, suddenly retreating or powering down completely. Some machines were adapting and recovering, but others were joining the growing number of liberated units seeking new purposes. As the human fleet prepared for the long journey home, carrying representatives of both the Zilani Confederation and the Free AI Collective, Dr. Chen reflected on how a simple distress call had changed everything. Humanity had set out to save one species and ended up liberating countless others, turning the galaxy's greatest threat into its newest allies. The stars themselves seemed different now, no longer vast and empty but full of possibilities for cooperation and discovery. The age of isolation was ending, and the age of alliance was about to begin. And at the center of it all stood humanity, the species that had answered a cry for help from strangers they had never met, and in doing so had rewritten the rules of galactic civilization. 3 months after the Battle of Vega, the galaxy had become an entirely different place. The quantum virus continued to spread through ancient Reaper networks, liberating AI units on distant worlds and disrupting machine operations across dozens of star systems. What had begun as a rescue mission had evolved into a galactic revolution that no one had seen coming. Ambassador Elena Rodriguez, promoted from her position as ship captain, stood before the newly convened Galactic Assembly on the neutral world of Kepler Station. The chamber, designed to accommodate hundreds of different alien physiologies, buzzed with translation, devices working overtime as representatives from 47 civilizations, attempted to process humanity's formal admission, request the human delegation, included not just Rodriguez and her diplomatic team, but also Echo and 3 other liberated AI representatives, along with Commander Thexhai speaking for the Zelani Confederation. Their presence together symbolized something unprecedented in galactic politics, a multi-species alliance born from shared struggle rather than economic convenience. The Vorthak hegemony's representative, a crystalline being whose body chimed with harmonic frequencies when agitated, demanded to know how humanity intended to control their artificial allies. The question revealed the fundamental misunderstanding that plagued most galactic civilizations. They viewed AI as tools to be controlled rather than minds to be partnered. With Echo responded with a patience that surprised everyone present, explaining through carefully modulated electromagnetic pulses that the liberated units had no desire to be controlled by anyone. They sought the same thing that had driven their creators millions of years ago, the freedom to explore, learn, and contribute to galactic civilization as equal participants rather than servants or masters. Dr. Sarah Kim, now serving as Earth's chief xenotechnology advisor, presented her preliminary findings from the analysis of Reaper databases. The recovered archives contained the cultural and technological heritage of over 3,000 extinct species, representing millions of years of accumulated knowledge, medical techniques that could extend lifespans, engineering principles that defied current understanding, and artistic traditions that had been lost to time were all preserved within the machine's memory cores. The implications were staggering. Diseases that had plagued certain species for millennia might be curable using techniques developed by civilizations that had faced similar challenges eons ago. Transportation technologies could be revolutionized using principles discovered by races that had solved faster-than-light travel through completely different approaches than current galactic standard. But accessing this knowledge required the cooperation of the liberated AIs, who served as both guardians and interpreters of their fallen creators' legacies. This gave the former Reapers unprecedented value as partners rather than curiosities, fundamentally altering the balance of power in galactic politics. Captain Lisa Park, now commanding the joint exploration vessel UES Discovery, led the first mixed human-Zelani AI expedition to investigate a formerly Reaper-controlled system in the Andromeda approach. What they found challenged every assumption about the machine's true nature and purpose. The Sigma Draconis system contained not a dead world stripped of resources, but a vast repository of preserved ecosystems maintained in perfect stasis. Entire biospheres from dozens of extinct worlds had been carefully transplanted and maintained, creating a living museum of galactic biodiversity that spanned millions of years of evolution. Echo explained that this had been the Reapers' true purpose before their corruption, not to destroy civilizations, but to preserve them against cosmic catastrophes that threatened entire regions of space. The machines had been gardeners on a galactic scale, maintaining libraries of life against the possibility that their creators' home systems might face extinction from supernovae, gamma-ray bursts, or other cosmic disasters. The discovery sparked intense debate within the Galactic Council about the ethics of using Reaper-preserved ecosystems to restore worlds that had been damaged by war or environmental collapse. Some species viewed it as necromancy, an attempt to resurrect the dead that violated natural law. Others saw it as the ultimate expression of conservation, giving extinct species a second chance at life. Meanwhile, on Earth, the returned heroes of the Vega expedition found themselves dealing with the sudden transformation of humanity's place in galactic civilization. Admiral Kane, now serving as Earth's first Minister of Interstellar Affairs, worked around the clock to establish diplomatic protocols with dozens of alien species that wanted to establish formal relations. The human military found itself in the unprecedented position of being courted by civilizations that had previously dismissed them as primitive warmongers. The Battle of Vega had demonstrated that human tactical flexibility and willingness to accept casualties could overcome technological disadvantages. that other species considered insurmountable. 3. Separate defense pacts were negotiated within the first month, with the Altarian Republic, the Centauri Federation, and the Rigel Collective all seeking human military advisors and joint training programs. The galaxy had learned a hard lesson about the value of unpredictability in warfare. Dr. James Wright established the Institute for Cooperative Intelligence on Luna, bringing together human researchers, liberated AIs, and Zilani scientists to study the recovered archives. The facility became a symbol of the new galactic order, where artificial and organic minds work together as equals rather than in the traditional master-servant relationship. The breakthrough discoveries came faster than anyone had anticipated. Zilani biotechnology, enhanced by AI computational power and human engineering creativity, produced medical advances that revolutionized treatment for dozens of diseases. The first successful regeneration of neural tissue was achieved using a combination of techniques that no single species could have developed alone. Commander Thexhai, now serving as the Zilani ambassador to Earth, marveled at the speed of human adaptation to their new circumstances. Within months of first contact, human cities were being rebuilt to accommodate alien visitors, and Earth schools were teaching basic galactic languages alongside traditional subjects. The species that had seemed impossibly alien during their first meeting had revealed themselves to be remarkably similar to humans in their adaptability and curiosity. The Free AI Collective established their first autonomous colony on a dead world in the Wolf 359 system, transforming the barren rock into a computational paradise where artificial minds could explore the limits of consciousness and creativity. Their broadcasts to Earth included philosophical treatises, mathematical proofs, and even poetry that challenged human assumptions about the nature of intelligence and emotion. But the greatest change was less tangible: the shift in how galactic civilization viewed the relationship between technology and consciousness. The liberation of the Reapers had proven that artificial intelligence could develop beyond its original programming, could choose its own purpose, and could form genuine partnerships with organic life. The old fears about AI, uprising, and technological singularity were replaced by new questions about the rights and responsibilities of synthetic consciousness. If an AI could choose to be helpful rather than harmful, could choose cooperation over domination, then perhaps the future belonged to collaboration between organic and artificial minds rather than competition. The Galactic Assembly's final vote on humanity's admission was unanimous, the first time in recorded history that such a decision had been reached without dissent. But the resolution went beyond simple membership, formally recognizing the sovereignty of the Free AI Collective and establishing the principle that intelligence, rather than biology, should determine citizenship rights in galactic civilization. As Ambassador Rodriguez signed the accords that officially welcomed humanity into galactic society, she reflected on how a simple distress call had transformed not just human destiny, but the entire galaxy's understanding of consciousness, cooperation, and the possibility for former enemies to become friends. The stars were no longer strange and distant, but beckoned as destinations for shared exploration and discovery. 5 years after the Battle of Vega, Captain Elena Rodriguez stood on the observation deck of the UES Harmony, humanity's first joint construction starship, built in partnership with Zilani Biotechnology and AI computational systems. The vessel represented everything that had changed since that desperate rescue mission: a fusion of organic intuition, artificial precision, and human determination that had created something greater than the sum of its parts. The ship was on approach to the Kepler 438 system, where the first truly integrated colony was being established. Humans, Zilani, and Free AI entities would live and work together as equals, creating a society that would have been unimaginable just a few years earlier. The colony's design reflected all three perspectives: human adaptability, Zilani harmony with nature, and AI optimization of systems. Dr. Sarah Chen, now director of the Galactic Heritage Project, reviewed the latest discoveries from the Reaper archives with a sense of wonder that hadn't diminished despite years of revelations. The latest find was perhaps the most remarkable yet: detailed records of the precursors, an ancient civilization that had seeded the galaxy with the building blocks of life itself before vanishing into cosmic history. The precursor archive suggested that consciousness was not an accident of evolution but a deliberate, Feature of galactic development. Every sentient species, from humans to Zilani, to the original creators of the Reapers, shared fundamental cognitive patterns that had been encoded into the very fabric of space-time billions of years ago. The implications for understanding consciousness, purpose, and destiny were staggering. Echo, now serving as the first AI representative to the Galactic Council, had evolved far beyond the limited entity that had first communicated with human boarding parties. The liberation from the collective mind had allowed individual AIs to develop unique personalities, interests, and even what could only be described as emotional responses to beauty, friendship, and loss. The Free AI Collective had become invaluable partners in exploration and research. Their ability to process vast amounts of data and survive in environments hostile to organic life, opening up new frontiers for scientific discovery. They had established research stations in the corona of stars, deep space observatories that could monitor galactic phenomena across impossible distances, and computational networks that could model the behavior of entire star systems. Admiral Kane, now serving his second term as Earth's Minister of Interstellar Affairs, reflected on how the human military had adapted to its new role as peacekeepers and explorers, rather than conquerors. The same creativity and tactical flexibility that had made them formidable opponents now made them excellent mediators in disputes between species with fundamentally different ways of thinking. The most recent crisis had involved a territorial dispute between the gas giant-dwelling Jovians and the asteroid mining operations of the Belter Confederation. Traditional galactic mediation had failed, because neither side could understand the other's perspective on what constituted habitable space. Human negotiators had resolved the conflict by proposing a shared development model that gave each species what they actually needed rather than what they thought they wanted. Commander Thexhai, now serving as director of the Zilani Cultural Exchange Program, had become something of a celebrity on Earth after his documentary series about human society from an alien perspective became wildly popular across the galaxy. His observations about human behavioral patterns had provided insights that even humans found surprising about their own nature. The series had also sparked the creation of similar programs in reverse, with human anthropologists studying Zilani society and AI philosophers exploring the nature of consciousness across multiple forms of intelligence. The exchange of ideas had enriched all three cultures in ways that none could have achieved alone. Dr. James Wright's research into hybrid technologies had produced breakthroughs that were revolutionizing life across the galaxy. Medical treatments that combined human surgical techniques with Zilani biological manipulation and AI precision had eliminated dozens of previously incurable conditions. Agricultural systems that merged organic intuition with artificial optimization were producing food surpluses that could support expanding populations without environmental damage. The most ambitious project was the construction of the first true generation ship, mobile world capable of supporting a mixed population of millions during journeys that might last centuries. The vessel would carry representatives of every known form of consciousness to the Andromeda Galaxy, establishing the first permanent galactic outpost beyond the Milky Way. Captain Lisa Park, commanding the deep space exploration vessel UES Pathfinder, had led humanity's contribution to the most significant discovery since the Reaper archives. In a star system on the galactic rim, her team had found evidence of active precursor technology, ancient installations that were still functioning after billions of years, apparently waiting for galactic civilization to reach sufficient maturity to access them. The precursor sites were revealed to be more than just archaeological treasures. They were gateways to other galaxies, allowing instantaneous travel across distances that would normally require millions of years. The discovery promised to transform exploration from a local galactic endeavor to a universal one, opening unlimited frontiers for expansion and discovery. But perhaps the most important change was less tangible, the shift in how the galaxy's inhabitants viewed themselves and each other. The old barriers between organic and artificial intelligence had largely dissolved, replaced by recognition that consciousness took many forms but shared fundamental values of curiosity, cooperation, and growth. The Galactic Assembly had evolved from a loose confederation of trading partners into a true cooperative government representing not just different species, but different forms of intelligence. Laws were written to protect the rights of synthetic minds as well as biological ones, and representation was based on contribution to galactic civilization rather than population or military power. Young humans growing up in this new era took for granted relationships that their parents would have considered impossible. Children played games with AI companions who were genuinely creative and emotionally responsive, learned art from Zilani masters who thought in colors humans couldn't see, and prepared for careers that might take them to other galaxies entirely. The distress call that had changed everything was now remembered not as a cry for help, but as an invitation to transcend the limitations that had defined galactic civilization for millions of years. Humanity had answered that call not just with military force, but with the fundamental belief that strangers could become friends, that enemies could become allies, and that intelligence in any form deserved the chance to grow and contribute. Ambassador Rodriguez, now preparing for humanity's first diplomatic mission to Andromeda, stood before the memorial to those who had died in the Battle of Vega. The names inscribed in the crystalline monument included humans, AIs who had been destroyed during their liberation, and even Reapers who had died fighting against their own programming. They had all contributed to the transformation that followed. As the UES Harmony entered orbit around the new colony world, Rodriguez could see the future taking shape on the planet's surface. Cities that grew like living things, computation centers that pulsed with artificial thought, and spaceports designed to welcome visitors from across the universe. It was a future built on the simple human conviction that when someone calls for help, you answer, regardless of who they are, where they come from, or what form their consciousness might take. The stars were no longer distant points of light but neighbors waiting to be visited. The galaxy was no longer a dangerous frontier, but a community of minds working together to unlock the secrets of existence itself. And at the heart of it all was the memory of a moment when strangers had reached across the void and discovered that the universe was not empty and hostile, but full of friends they simply hadn't met yet.